2 more things we got to do. One of which normally would be either using some type of pre-painting prep to kind of clean off the surface, which I've got some here from Eastwood. Something like this with a clean paper towel. Spray this down. Grab your paper towel. What we're going to do is just clean the surface off. And this is so in case anything fell on here, any dust, dirt, grease, basically degreasing that panel, making sure it's nice and clean so we can get that proper adhesion. You can see what came off there. Some of that is actually some of the black paint dust from when we scuffed it up with the Scotch-Brite, but still we're making sure we've got a clean panel here. We're going to get great adhesion promotion. The next thing you're going to do is tack off your panel. You got tack rags. So your tack rags are kind of like what they sound like. They're sticky rags that they come kind of pre-sealed, and I've got one that's not open. I'm not concerned about it in this case. I'm not going to open one for you, but essentially a tack rag is, like I said, it's like a sticky fiber rag, and the same thing right before you go to paint. We mix the primer. Now right before you're painting, in case any dust or anything is floating in the air fell on this thing, you hit that with the tack rag and you're very lightly, with no pressure, just letting it float under your hand, tacking it off, because even though it's sticky, it's not going to leave anything on the panel unless you push down on the bottom. Then you want to transfer the tackiness from the rag onto it, so you're very lightly just tacking it off, right? Got it clean. Then once you get the gun connected, you might want to spray real quick with some air. Again, if you're doing it like me here in your own shop, dust and little particles, they're flying in the air. It happens. Everything's ready to go now. Let's mix our primer up. So another thing I like to do in my paint kind of mixing station area like I've got here is keep stuff on standby that you need. So over here I've got brand new mixing sticks. Just got them from Lowe's, whatever. Chinese chopsticks you can actually kind of use sometimes too. I'll keep old ones also for other stuff that you might wind up needing in a different box, but keep them separated. You want to make sure that these are clean too and that there's no grease or dirt or nothing on them, because this is going to be going in your paint. Other paint guns here. I've got my my drop cloths, different gun kits. Down here I've got some gun cleaner, and you kind of keep it a nice organized little area. Again, we're being very precise, very careful about how we're going about doing stuff. So now what we're going to need to do is get our primer open. So this is my Eastwood 2K urethane primer surfacer, and I'm going to open this up. And the moment you open this, we're going to put our respirator on. There are harmful chemicals inside of the paint primer that you just don't want to be breathing in. That's why we're wearing a respirator. Before I do that though, I need a fresh mixing cup, so let me grab one. And like I said, what I like to do after I'm done using these is save them, like the ones I've got over here, and they make really good gun cleaners. Once you kind of wipe them out with a rag, of course, you don't want to introduce any more dirt to them. So now I've got a brand new mixing cup, and a lot of these mixing cups will come with different ratios on them. So now you're going to be reading along the edge of the ratio, and you've got to read the rules displayed on your primer surfacer. So 4:1 with the activator. 4:1 tells us that we're going to be dealing with this guy right here, 4:1. Now it's got 4:1:1. That's if we're going to be adding in our reducer, which I probably will. So I like to mark it off, so this way once you start to pour it in there, it gives you a quick little visual orientation to where you're going. So here we are, 4:1. This is what we're working with. So now, depending on how much paint you need, or primer in this case, you're going to follow these ratios. So as we're looking up these lines, so you'd fill the primer up into here all the way up to the 4 line. Then, following the same number 4, you add the activator up until it reaches this number 4. Makes sense so far? So if you're going 4 parts, you fill to the 4 and then you follow the next 4. That gets you your 1 part activator, and then if you want to reduce it, the next 4 up to the reducer. So if we were doing, let's say you wanted to go 7, just for example. So you filled it up with 7 of primer, then you follow this 7 with your activator, then this 7 with your reducer. And that's how you go 4:1:1. So hopefully that made sense to you guys. So in my case, we're doing a really small spot here. I'm just going to do 1.
So just to clarify, the numbers that I'm pointing to are somewhat arbitrary, meaning if you pick the number 2, then follow up to the next number 2 and the next number 2, it still keeps you in the 4:1:1 ratio. You don't have to actually start at the number 4 to have a 4:1:1.
This here does not mean that this full amount is reducer. This is what it's going to end up at once we've added this amount of primer plus this little tiny little bit here of activator plus that little tiny bit of reducer, that's the total amount it'll wind up being in the cup. Just enough to come here and spray it. So let's do that. So as I'm cracking this primer open, since I've used this before, there's going to be dried up primer around the top. You want to be careful that doesn't fall in, but if it does, that's okay, because we're going to also use a strainer to make sure when we pour this in, it passes through these little microscopic little passages, and we're not actually pouring dirty stuff into our paint. We'll pour it through the strainer, and this will capture any stuff. Always want to label your stuff. Here, July 19. July 19. Being labeled, right? We know the dates of stuff, so this way, when you're storing your primers, your paints, all this stuff, I don't like to leave it out here in my garage over the winter because it gets kind of cold in here. I have a closet in my house that stays around 50 degrees or so, which is better than out here. Ideally, most of this stuff should be kept around room temperature, around 60 to 70 degrees. Now this primer here, I'm going to use some chopsticks. You can see it starts to separate, but once you mix it all back together, it'll be good. Now that's good primer. It's still flowing. Another little trick is that I tap holes in the lip here along the top, so as you pour it in, it'll actually fall back into the can, and this way it doesn't build up as bad around the rim. Be sure to get everything on the bottom, all the corners. Usually some of this stuff will start to build up a little thicker on the bottom. You can kind of see that chunkiness on the edge there. Got to get this all the way through. Of course, this is at home. I'm not a professional shop. I don't have those shaker machines or anything like that. This is still a way to do it, but you got to get it all mixed through. Alright, now you can see how it's flowing off. It's primer, it's thick, it's always still going to run kind of like that, but it's still got a nice run to it. Paint is going to be a lot runnier and a lot thinner, but primer, this is what it basically looks like before we add our activator and reducer. Put this down here. Here we are, a 4 to 1 to 1, and we're looking to go right here to this guy, filling to that number 1. So we're leaving it down on a level surface. We're going to tap this first so if there's any dried up paint it doesn't fall in. Get our strainer, and we're going to fill it right to that 1. Oh boy. And it's too thick to go through. So we're just going to go straight in. And I'll get this strained out after I get it fully mixed. What I'm going to do is add my reducer. So now we've got it to our number 1. We're going to add the reducer up to the second one. Now we're going to add our activator. So now we're going to go to the next one. Get this all mixed up. You see how this is pouring out? I then like to get some paper towels, clean this up. You don't want that staying in there, so I'll kind of attack it from both sides like this, smush it back in there, let it start pouring down those holes that I tapped through. You don't want this to dry up so much so that you can't close it or open it the next time. The cap is back on. And make sure that's closed and sealed up nicely, and before I get out of here, I hit that with a nice rubber mallet and get that really nice and down. And so here we are with the primer mixed up. You can see it's got a nice flow. It's liquidy. You know, it's not like syrup. This is falling right off that chopstick. One final note before we spray this. We're at 48 degrees surface temperature here. Ideally, when you're painting, you want to be around 70 degrees. This is a little bit cold. This will still probably lay down okay, but it's going to take a little bit more time to flash off, and it could lead to issues. In an ideal situation, I would want my garage hotter than this. I could use a heat gun to get this hotter. And you also want your materials to be warm too. So now let's go ahead and get this into the gun. Going to use our strainer here. And pour this in. Whoop. See how that flowed nicely down into there. As compared to before when it was way too thick right out of the can. Again, I'm just shooting a small amount here just to test this out. See how it does. Put this back here, trying to stay as clean, neat, and organized as possible, making sure that this is nice and tight, and it is, all the way to here. Maybe I'll be taking notes too on how much that I mixed up and what I'm using, keeping yourself organized. Get our air hooked up. See, we're at 45, but as we pull it, we're at that 30 that we need. Give it a quick dust off with just the air. Make sure this is clean and ready to go. Your hose behind you. And now we're ready to start. So right here, you got your 6 to 8 inches. You're staying parallel, and you're working on your speed. Oh yeah, look at that. Beautiful. And I'm already starting to run out, but you can see how great that laid down. Wow, it's like glass. Hoping you guys could see that. That laid down perfectly. This gun is awesome. That's the nicest I've ever seen primer lay down. That's really nice. And you can kind of see the light. We say walking the light. That looks really good. I'm really impressed with this gun. And you can see just from that little spray, got a little bit of stuff up in the air. So what I'm going to do right now is open my door, get a little ventilation in here. But I am thoroughly impressed. This gun is awesome. Remember again, I mean, it went down like glass. That went down so smooth. Really nice. So I flipped it up just to give you guys a demonstration as if this was like the fender and it was on the car or a door. Obviously, I didn't even clean this. I didn't even hit this with a Scotch guard or nothing. Let's just shoot it real quick. Just give you a quick, another example of how we're going technique-wise, right? I've got my hose controlled behind me. I'm managing to keep the gun straight and smooth like this. You see how I'm doing this very delicate walk? Getting your motion down. Practicing, being the robot, being one with the gun. Material. Favorite part about painting, cleanup. Just like we talked about before, we're gonna have to take this holding down, but real quick, what I'm gonna do is splash some lacquer thinner in here. We don't want any of this primer drying up and gumming up inside the gun. Gonna fill this thing up a good way here, swish it around, let it start to dissolve the amount of primer that's already inside your cup. I'm going to come outside here and spray it out. You can see that nice sand pattern too. Spray that out. Sorry, environment. Right? It's all in over there. It's flashing off pretty good actually, and it looks like it laid down really nice. I love it. So now I'm going to fill one of these old mixing cups, some lacquer thinner. Start getting this thing taken apart. Get our thinner, got the tip and the nozzle in there, and then here with the needle itself, just going to kind of get this thing wiped all the way down. And then we're being very surgical and putting it back down someplace clean. Aerosol injected cleaner is helpful here. Spray it up in there. I get my brush, cleaning it out. Alright, now we're going to reduce the pressure here so we're not making a mess. Spray through it. Clean it all out. You even want to wipe the outside of the gun down too. Just take care of it. Take care of your equipment, it'll take care of you. So my face is probably all messed up from the respirator, but overall, I'm really honestly impressed with this gun. It laid down super smooth, shot out laser straight, went down like glass. Very impressed with this Eastwood. It's a great product, I would have to say. So you got your P500 for your primer. You got the CC500, which is going to be for your base coat. So excellent stuff. You can see how it just laid down. Really nice. Hopefully you learned something with me here today. You can see from all the work we spent, all that time that we spent prepping, to how little time we actually spent doing the painting. It's a lot of work. Hoping that you guys learned something and that this was useful. So thanks for watching. And last thing before we store our materials, make sure we label our new date of when we just used it and make sure everything is tapped